All right, welcome back everyone. In this tutorial, we lastly finished with establishing a connection to a database server and creating a database actually from our PHP we've been using. So in this tutorial, we are just going to continue from there, and I want to make mention of the fact that all that we've been saying so far, what we said at the beginning of this tutorial, the overview that I did, you saw that a database is made up of tables, and tables are made up of rows and columns. So we are just going to build based on what we had established before, right? So what we are going to be doing in this tutorial, we are going to be creating a table using PHP and MySQL. Like we said, a database table has its own unique name and consists of columns and rows, right? Yes, a database table, you cannot have a database with two database tables with the same name. No, it can't exist. So they have unique names and they are made up of columns and rows. So actually see that, right? To create a table, you use the create table keyword in SQL. So you pass in the create table, then the table name. So we are going to create a table of this nature, and I want you to see the syntax, right? So create table, then the table name, I pass in students, and then I pass in the first columns, right? So you have this is the ID is a unique identifier. I think I will explain this later, but this is the syntax to create a table. And you should take note of some keywords that we use here. We use auto increment, we use primary key, we use not null, and so on, which I'm going to dive into that. So note from what we did before, um, the data type specifies what type of data the column can hold. So switching back to this, we have our ID and we said it's an int, right? An int stands for an integer. A varchar is a normal variable character, meaning that variable character length. Um, you could also call it a text field, long text, and so on. And you have timestamp, which is the local time that has both the year, the month, the day, and so on. So I think that is it. Those are the various data types, and I want us to explain them. Not null says that that particular column or that particular row on that column should not be null. When you are inserting, you have to pass a value, right? You also have things like default, which is a default value that is to be set in case somebody did not actually fill in. For example, wanted to actually uh, passing the registration date and somebody refused to actually put the registration date. So it's going to actually put the default date, maybe to say today's date or tomorrow's date or whatever, unsigned, which you have here, unsigned, is used for unsigned used for number types, right? So it can be positive or zero. And I mean, these data types, I think you can actually get to work on them, research on them, and just know. But these are the most common data types I will be using SQL. And take note of the primary key. Each database table has a unique column that identifies some attributes on that table. For example, if we have customer table, then it could the unique thing might be the customer ID, saying that no two customers can have the same ID, right? Let's take for a number, for example, your email. You two people cannot have the same email. That's a unique identifier, for example. So that is what a primary key is used for. And okay, so this is how you create a table in PHP. You pass in the same SQL statement and then you execute it, right? Same thing, you just need to know what the SQL statement is and you execute it. I think that is it. Let's switch to our code editor and actually see this in action. All right, so at the top, remember I have included my include or my connect.php, which establishes a connection. And then this is my database query that I want to issue. I could actually remove this from, and it could be 1, 2, 3, but the maximum is 11, right? An integer is maximum 11 characters long. And then auto increment means that, for example, if we insert the first and it is 1, when we are inserting the other, we must not pass in 2, right? It is going to automatically move to 2. And if we are inserting, say, the third user is going to move to 3, and so on. And then the primary key says that, okay, this is what will identify this student table, right? Now we pass in the full name and the variable character of length 120, right? And not null says that, okay, these full names cannot be null. You have the country, you have the email, you have the gender, which I'm going to actually put to small letters. And this we could say date of birth, DOB, and pass this in, right? This is our query. Now, we check if there was a connection. If there was a connection, then we establish the connection. Sorry, we um, execute our query and passing the connection and the SQL statement, right? Same thing over and over. So most of what we'll be doing now, we'll keep on doing this over and over. But what we need to know is just knowing how to write this SQL statement. Even though I'm not going to provide you a different course for that, like I said, but I try my best as much as possible to explain these things, right? So use a create table keyword and pass it the table name. Then you pass in, this is called a column, right? Column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4, 5, and 6. So if we execute this, for example, php create table.php, and we execute it, you actually saw some delay here. Yeah, that's how it's supposed to be. So first, it connected to the database, and next, the table student created successful. So if we switch back to our browser and open our localhost and go to the database suri.php, you actually get to see something new, students, right? And if I open it, you see this ID, full name, country, email, and gender, right? So that is how you create a table in uh, SQL and PHP. So you should note something. This particular query, for example, I could come here and execute it here, right? I could just paste it here and run, and it is actually going to run, right? But since we are using PHP, we want to do it from the scripting side. We don't want to come to the database and manually do this. Okay, so this is how you can do it on your SQL, on your PHP admin, and run this. It will run, and you can just connect to it, and you're able to access it. Okay, that is how you create a table. And the next thing we are going to be going into is how to insert data into the table, right? We have our table already and we want to insert data into it. So after a database and a table have been created, we can start adding data to them. Here are some syntax rules, right? So you check the SQL query must be quoted in PHP. The string values inside the SQL must be quoted. The numeric values must not be quoted. The word null must not be quoted. These are just rules for writing or for inserting data. For example, if you want to insert a number, you cannot insert a number and put it in quote. We said in PHP that quotes mean string, right? So if we specify it in the database that, okay, the phone number is an integer, and you come on your script and you wanted to pass in the integer inside a string format, that's going to cause you an issue. The null too is a keyword, and if you put it in string format, it's no longer a keyword. So those are just some rules that you should follow when inserting data. So the insert into statement is used to add new records to my SQL table. So you have a syntax like this: insert into table name, and then you have this, right? So you have insert into table name, you pass in the columns, then the values, you pass in the values. All right, here is an example SQL. So that will be a SQL statement insert into students, full name, country, email, gender, password. Remember, I did not pass in the ID. That is where the auto increment comes in, meaning that even when we don't pass in the ID, it is automatically going to fit in one day. And the value we have to pass in the full name, country, the email, the gender, the password, and the date of birth, right? Yeah, that is it. So I am going to switch to my browser, and we are going to go to this file, and okay, we are inserting data, right? So this is my data that I have defined. Note something, this data could actually be data that you are getting from the front end. So for example, full names could be, for example, let's say post, then things like full names and so on. Okay, we are not yet with that, right? And assigning it statically. So we have this, and look at my statement. Insert, let me collapse this. So this is my statement. Insert into user. No, our it's no longer user. We have students, email, gender, full names, user password, which is password instead, and what else? Let's go back to our create table. We have full names, country, email, gender. So we come back to where is our file? Insert, right? So we have country. We have country. We have is there was there password? Let's check that again. I'm going to just close these things. Create table. Okay, there was no password. Date of birth. Uh, Passing. Let me just pass in the date of birth here. So the order of insertion actually does matter. So I'm going to actually please just pardon me. I'm going to pass in the gender here. I'm going to pass in the date of birth here, and date of birth is going to be something like 2020 020 02. Hope the date format is correct. So we can actually let me pass in the full names and the email, the gender, the uh, what else? Another variable here called country. Set it to Cameroon, for example, and we have that. So we actually have. Let's see. Are we leaving anything out? Full names, email, gender, date of birth. So I'm going to pass in uh, date of birth. Date of birth. So look at what I'm using here. I'm using backslash. Right. It's sometimes very useful when you're actually dealing with this. Okay. So now I'll pass in the full names here. Full names in the email, then the gender, what next? The country and the date of birth. Hopefully our query is correct. Let's just hope it's correct. If it's not correct, then we'll have to correct that. Okay, so we have this statement now. This is our SQL statement, and let's say we want now to insert this. We check this will be called con, since it's coming from the connect.php, and that is what we are referencing. So that will be called con, and then our query will be this, right? So if it was inserted, print done, else print error. So let's actually try to execute this and see. PHP insert.php, right? So we see done, right? Meaning that if we go back to our database, go to Zuri, the students, you actually see this student here, right? You see. So since we're passing the timestamp, you actually see the 0000. So you could actually pass in the date instead of timestamp, right? And you see the gender. Sorry, we really we did a messy work here. So our gender, let's do another insertion, male instead. Uh, Name will be on Andrew, and date of birth will be 2000. That's not my date of birth too. So okay, so we still do this insertion and good. Go back to our database and refresh. Okay, so you have on Andrew now, Cameron, male, and so on. So this is how you insert data into the database using PHP, right? So this is kind of very simple. You just need to know the SQL statement and then how to execute it, right? Good. So I think we will just go to the next, which has to do with inserting multiple data at once, right? Imagine that you want to insert so many data at once. You have to actually, you don't have to write this over and over. There is a simpler way. So we have this. Same thing is here, so I might really have to change a lot of things. Sorry, this was prepared for something else. Full names, gender, there is gender. I'll call this date of birth, call this country, and what else? Are we missing out? We have the gender, email. Do we have email? No. So let's pass in the email here. So our first data, we pass this, the full name. I'll just have to drag this and shift it. No time to waste. Okay, we have full names, we have gender. Okay, we have gender, we have date of birth. Date of birth, I'm going to put 2020 5, for example. And there's the first insertion, then we have the email. I'm really sorry we have to do this again. Okay, so we have the email. That is the first data that we are inserting. And I am going to just copy this and paste and modify since. Okay, now I want you to take note of what I'm going to do here. Note of what I'm going to do. So now, since I want to insert multiple data, let me get rid of this since we are going to have issues with our structure. Getting rid of this, I want to insert these two at once, so I can put this dot operator, then I put equal to, right? This is query 1, this is query 2. So I insert into students, full names, gender, date of birth, country, and email. And we pass in, let's say, AMD, and what is this? This is the full names, gender, date of birth. So, oh, what was this for? Date of birth, country, Cameroon. And the next one, we are going to pass in the country here to be Nigeria. And the country we have email. So just a few minutes, please. I'm getting confused a little bit on this. All right, so you have full names, you have gender, you have date of birth. Yeah, what am I doing? You have date of birth. So the order actually matters, right? You have date of birth, you have country, then you have email. So date of birth, country, and email, and that is it. So we have those two queries, and I'm going to get rid of this because we don't need it. We have those two queries, and we have this statement, my SQLi underscore multi-query, right? So this one is used to run multiple queries at the same time. So that if I want to execute this, it will insert this and insert this, right? So hopefully we are right. I'm going to execute it with multiple.php, and okay, we have an error, and we have what's the error? Undefined variable connection. Sorry, con. Okay, another error. Oh God, what's this? Okay, let's try to fix this out and see what the issue is. Line 11. So we insert into students full names, gender, date of birth, country, email, and these values. Hopefully, let me use another name here. Andrew. I like using my name. And I'm going to re-execute this and check the error again. Mm, let's see this. Initially, this was designed to run on a different database, so I guess that's where the problem is coming from, right? But let's just figure that out. Full names, gender, date of birth, country, and email. Full names, gender, date of birth, country, and email. Okay, let's just hope we are correcting it. Right, so it is inserted successful. It was just some commas and so on that we did here. So now checking our database, this is what we have at the beginning, right? We issued two queries to create to insert two of fields of data, two rows of data. So if we refresh this, you actually see two additional columns or two additional rows added, right? This is how you create multiple queries in PHP, how to issue multiple queries. You write a query and you have this. So I could have the third, the fourth, but all of them are going to have this. And then I use the multi query function and passing a connection on the query. That is as simple as it is. That is how you issue multiple query using PHP. Hopefully it was clear enough from inserting just one row of data to inserting multiple rows of data and creating table, right? That is how you do it in PHP. Hopefully that was clear enough. I'm going to actually push this to GitHub so that you actually see how it is used. And I'm actually refactor this a bit to make sure that it's presentable, just for readability, right? Yeah, that is it. I think we now know that, and we'll be moving to the next